Hello, dear friends. Today we continue our acquaintance with the memoirs of a Wehrmacht general. In this part, we will evaluate the battles of the Wehrmacht's Fourth Army, which fought in incredibly difficult conditions. Don't forget to rate the video, and let's begin. January 20th, 1942. Letter to his wife. The village of Strekalovo. We are practically surrounded here, near Yuknov. Unless a miracle happens, fate will soon carry out its verdict. All the promised support measures have failed. None of the promises and assurances of help have come to fruition. If anything does come, it will be too late, a phrase that can be used to describe all military leadership and the Führer's decisions. He ordered us to hold out here, against the advice of all the experts. He created this situation without any need to do so. I have cried out to the Lord so often and so loudly. So far, he has sent no help. The verdict of fate is heartbreaking and merciless, and with each passing day the end draws nearer. But now there is not long to wait. Everything has an end. Historical reference. On January 20th, 1942, Heinrici was appointed commander of the Fourth Army. Now he was faced with the task of holding the weak positions of the Fourth Army, which was defending a narrow section along the highway. This artery of the army had to be defended not only from the south and east, but increasingly from the north and west, where partisans, breakthrough cavalrymen, and landing troops under the command of General Pavel Alexeyevich Belov were attacking. The military situation that developed in the following weeks resembled a battle in encirclement. January 21st, letter to my wife. Starvation village. Yesterday was another day of gloom. The Russians were preparing to take us in a pincer movement from the north and south. All possible countermeasures at that moment led to nothing. Relentlessly and definitively, we prepared for what fate had in store for us. Suddenly I received a call informing me that I had been appointed commander of the Fourth Army, replacing General Kubler, who had only recently taken command. And I was immediately pulled out of the thick of events unharmed. It was God's will, created by Him. Now my burden is to continue this struggle with the forces of the army. No German army has ever been in such a situation, as far as human memory can tell. The enemy has brought up all its forces with the aim of destroying it. Whether this will succeed and whether it is possible to prevent it, no one can say at this moment. I can only pray to the Lord that He will help me here too and intervene at the last moment. Today He delayed our enemy with minus 38 degrees Celsius, yesterday with minus 42 degrees Celsius. In the morning I drove to the army. It was minus 42 degrees Celsius. The highway was clear. On the side of the road were dead Russians, wrecked cars, everything covered in snow. Even here, such prolonged low temperatures are abnormal. I met General Kubler. He was removed after telling the Führer that he thought it was impossible for the army to hold the highway in Yuknov. Maybe he's right. But since he didn't show unconditional faith and said so, he was removed. The army's situation is tense. Thank God we can still hold the highway, our only guaranteed source of supplies. It is unfortunate that in the north the enemy is in our rear, and in the northwest, only 10 kilometers separate it from Yuknov. In the morning, the 52nd and 263rd Infantry Divisions will attack to the north, which will give us some breathing room. South of Yuknov is a particularly dangerous spot. The enemy has deployed even larger forces there, although today everything is quiet. Perhaps it is too cold for them. January 23rd, diary entry. I am staying in Starvation. It is 28 degrees below zero. There is fighting on the highway again, although it is weak. There is transport communication with Yuknov. The railway from Vyazma has been partially blown up, and the only locomotive is frozen through. The situation with the railway and supplies is unbelievable. The forces of the 4th Tank Army approaching from the north, closing the gap north of us, are advancing slowly. The enemy, on the other hand, is constantly pouring new forces into this gap. There are now 3 enemy divisions there. The situation is becoming increasingly dangerous. However, the most difficult situation is now in the south. The enemy's forces and attacks are constantly increasing. The SS Division Reich took the village of Ugarishi during the day, excellent work, and surrounded the Russian 194th Division. January 24th, diary entry. Again, it's 32 degrees below zero. Everything is frozen. The engines won't start. The planes won't fly. There are frostbites everywhere. It's a disgusting situation. In the morning, I drove along the highway towards Yuknov and saw traces of the battle that took place the day before yesterday. In the village of Dolina, I met with General Berthold. At night, about 200 Russian skiers from the area of the village of Pelyaki came out to the highway and settled in the village next to the headquarters of my former corps. When I arrived, they had already been driven away, but they will return. The corps headquarters stayed awake all night, and finally, under the leadership of the Chief of Staff, went on the offensive. In general, the conditions are completely wild. Partisans, paratroopers, and skiers are roaming everywhere in the rear. When will the moment come when the demands of the situation exceed the capabilities of our troops? January 24th, letter to my wife. Please handle all these letters with care. They are documents. Yesterday evening, Hartmut called me from far away and congratulated me. I couldn't tell him what our situation is, practically hopeless. January 25th, diary entry. Despite this, I told the Chief of Staff, I believe that in the long run it will be impossible to hold our positions in front of Yuknov. Given the large enemy forces south of Yuknov, we will not be able to hold this corner to the west at the sharp bend of the Oka. In addition, the state of the troops is such that they simply cannot withstand constant defense and pressure. While our forces are constantly dwindling, the enemy's forces are growing every day. He is constantly deploying new divisions and ski battalions. Even if we manage to close the gap in the north, there is still a huge threat to the deep southern flank along the highway. The Chief of Staff agreed with my observations, but noted that Yuknov is of crucial importance. We must do everything possible to hold it. Fine, I said. Let's try to do that by straining all our forces, but I doubt it is possible. January 27th, diary entry. In the morning, sad news. The highway has been cut off, and northwest of Yuknov the enemy has blocked the road to Zhatsk. 2 deadly threats at once. The situation on the highway only worsened during the day. In the north, we managed to recapture the village. By evening, both roads remained in enemy hands. In addition, the enemy was pressing on the highway from the north, from the direction of the Bogoroditsky forest. They landed troops in our rear. We had no one there, and we couldn't send anyone because all our forces were now holding the front. Blocked roads meant the end of supplies. In 2 more days, the army would begin to starve. Our forces for recapturing the roads are extremely insignificant and scattered. We are doing everything we can to increase their numbers. But where can we get free forces? The situation is desperate. Plus, Field Marshal Kluge reminds us that the Führer unconditionally demands that we hold our position east of Yuknov. We cannot surrender it under any circumstances. But we are surrounded right on it. There is no other way to describe it. Tomorrow will determine whether we will recapture the highway. I am afraid not. January 28th, diary entry. We were unable to recapture the highway all day. This means that the Army has not received food and ammunition for 24 hours. Supplies are supposed to arrive by truck this evening, but that is not certain. Another day or two in this situation, and we will reach a critical stage. After all, our boys have to live on something. Despite the urgency of the situation, the 40th Corps performed poorly. In fact, it accomplished nothing today. This was partly due to the heavy snowstorm, drifts, and minus 25 degrees Celsius temperatures. However, more could have been expected given the importance of liberating the highway, which was known to the Corps and emphasized in the order. The road to Vyazma has been cut off by paratroopers. The enemy has also taken up positions on the road to Gzhatsk. This means that the Army is effectively completely cut off. The situation is unbearable. I hope that in the morning we will be able to clear the highway and, in particular, repel the enemy north of Yuknov with the forces of the 98th Division. If this fails, I don't even know what will happen. The snowdrifts from today's snowfall do not bode well. How difficult it is to be constantly in the most difficult areas for 8 weeks, trying to do something and experiencing failure after failure. But they were to be expected, since the enemy has the initiative all the time. And the Führer's order to hold everything back constantly puts us in this situation. Rommel was able to retreat and then win, but we have to hold on and give the initiative to the enemy. My gut often rebels. Despite this, everyone pretends that everything will end well. I don't know what will come of it. If anything, good. January 30th. Letter to my wife. The fierce fighting continues. Yesterday was another day of major crisis, and again, we failed to achieve our goal of gaining some space. And again, everything is ruined. Like a bubble, our corps hangs in the air, surrounded by the enemy on all sides. In order to get inside, today I had to fly on a Storch at an altitude of 25 meters above the Russians. They fired at us, but none of us were hit. All night long I couldn't sleep because of my worries. I couldn't fall asleep. It's just a crazy waste of energy. You keep yourself going with cognac and crazy smoking. February 4th, 1942. Letter to my wife. I was in Yuknov for 4 days. To get there, I had to drive along the highway just 400 meters from the Russians. They didn't shoot at us, or maybe we didn't hear it over the noise of the engine. My second car, which I replaced by pure chance, had a flat tire, stopped, and came under mortar and machine gun fire. But, thank God, no one was hurt. We sat in Yuknov for 3 days, completely surrounded by the enemy. By evening, the road we had taken to get to the city had been cut off. The first night it snowed and everything was calm. The next 2 nights it was minus 25 degrees Celsius and there was a full moon. Between 6:30 p.m. and 5:30 a.m., there were Russian air raids with rare breaks. Every quarter of an hour we heard the roar of engines and knew that the next one was coming. Soon we heard the whistling of falling bombs and explosions. The first night in Yuknov cost 82 lives, not counting the wounded. A house 200 meters away from us was completely destroyed. We lay in our beds in our little hut and could only pray to God to spare us. In His mercy, He did so. Not a single bomb fell closer than 150 to 200 meters from us. Sleep was out of the question on the first night. Our emotions were too tense, and as soon as we dozed off, We heard the sound of new planes and immediately woke up. On the second night, we slept partly because of fatigue and were awakened by bomb explosions. I joined the headquarters of 1 Corps. Today, at about 5 a.m., in the dining room where we all had dinner together at about 7:30 p.m., and even then accompanied by explosions so loud that dirt fell from the ceiling. 3 shells exploded 10 meters from the building, blowing out all the windows. I will always remember this meal, during which everyone could hear the whistling of bombs, but we continued our casual conversation without reacting to it. The return route was cut off again this morning. The Russians attacked with all their forces and advanced on it with tanks, so we had to fly back. We just had an emergency landing because 2 Y engines failed as we approached the airfield in Roslavl. On the way back to the command post, we had a minor car accident. Truly, someone is protecting us. During an emergency landing in the snow, the plane would have nosedived. If things go well for another 3 days and God helps us, then perhaps we will be able to break out of the encirclement for the time being. The only way to survive here is with cognac and cigarettes. That's how it is. You can't do without them here. February 5th, diary entry. On February 1st, I went to Yuknov. The situation on the highway is such that it is absolutely necessary to free up reserves by reducing the front. I am informing the Army Group of our intentions. I would like to add that the 17th Division strike to the north with the aim of joining forces with the 4th Tank Army also needs to be supported by fresh forces. The Army Group is again dissatisfied. They do not want to see our real situation. They are still preoccupied with the idea of establishing contact in the north with the 4th Panzer Army from our current positions. They again demand that we distribute our forces along the front line while the enemy withdraws its troops and attacks our flanks. They are afraid to suggest to the Führer that we retreat even a few meters. Deep down, they realize the necessity of such a step, but only in extreme cases do they dare to convey their opinion to the top. So you feel like a swimmer who has been tied up and thrown into the water. We could defend ourselves, but the means to do so have been taken away from us and are being given back so late that almost everything is already lost. For both commanders and troops, there is nothing worse and more crippling than such situations. The result? New offensives in the snow, which we wanted to avoid, and new heavy losses for our ridiculously depleted troops. What about our divisions? They have between 400 and 600 infantrymen, which is essentially a battalion. In return for the more than 10,000 who have been lost, we have not received even 500 reinforcements. This is the help that was promised to us back at Christmas, and now it is already February. Guys with frostbitten limbs are not allowed to go to the infirmary, because then our numbers would drop significantly. Despair is spreading at the front. How much longer? Until the Russian winter turns to mud. That's in April. 8 more weeks. That's how long these battles with retreats have taken. All hopes are pinned on the new commander-in-chief who will restore order. But he was the one who created this situation in the first place, because he stubbornly stands his ground. In Yuknov, we learned that our small retreat had been graciously allowed, so we freed up the 52nd Division. If this had not happened, today, February 5th, it would have been all over for us. Without it, our positions on the highway would have been crushed today. After the ups and downs of the last few days, today the enemy has entrenched itself on the highway in Barsuki. So far we have repelled them again, but the Russians control a key hill 400 meters from the highway and are shelling it with artillery, anti-tank guns, and machine guns. It's simply despairing. February 6th, letter to my wife. Another few days of ups and downs. Our situation has improved slightly, but it remains very critical. Before that, it was simply desperate. This constant fear is wearing us down and depressing us. Everyone wants this winter to end, but it will last at least until the beginning of April. The frost is not letting up. In the first days of February, there was a blizzard for 3 days in a row. All the roads were covered with meter-deep snowdrifts. Now the sky is clear. It's -20 to -25 degrees Celsius, and there is an icy wind. And there are no signs of change. I live only with thoughts of military affairs. Nothing else comes to mind. In any case, I cannot force myself to think about anything else. There is no peace of mind. All the time you live in a state of wondering how the current day or the coming night will pass. Only by trusting in God is it possible to endure all this. February 9th, letter to my wife. I couldn't write for several days. I was at the front and stayed overnight in my old corps. This time the weather spared us from air raids. Recently there have been plenty of them. No matter how much we hope, our overall situation has not improved. Every day brings new turmoil and crisis. Today and yesterday there were difficult situations again. With great sorrow we somehow managed to deal with them. However, we are not sure that even greater difficulties will not arise in the near future. So we live in constant tension and constant anxiety. We are always in the minority, always dependent on the enemy. It seems that he has unlimited resources at his disposal, while we lack them or have none at all. He is bringing in more and more human reserves, while our numbers are dwindling. Many unforeseen difficulties await us ahead. Everything is untimely or not as promised. Therefore, every day is full of new worries that you fear. When the phone rings, you hardly dare to pick it up. Joyful news is rare. And yet it is a success that we have managed to hold out for so long. Oh, how eagerly you await your rest at last. February 11th, letter to my daughter. My beloved Gizalochka. Things are very, very difficult for us. Like a rabid beast, the enemy attacks us incessantly, with 3 or 4 times our strength, and we have been on the offensive for 10 weeks now. Several times we were almost surrounded. At times it is easy to despair. The Lord helped us at the last moment. Without Him, who threw dust in the enemy's eyes and prevented them from recognizing their chance, we would be in a completely desperate situation. And even now, no one knows what lies ahead. Every day brings new sorrows, new difficulties, and new questions about how to overcome all this. I lack the inner peace and focus to write letters. All my thoughts are filled with bitter sorrow in my heart. I often think of you, even when I don't write. May all be well with you. That's all for today. If you like the video, please support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now. See you next time.